everybody. I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse, and you are our wonderful Patreon patrons. Welcome. This is my favorite part of the show. I know I say the show. This is a show, but we do the show. We do Tesla Time news and in-depth and Patreon bonus story and on-air, all back to back to back to back. Right? We just sit down. We do it every week. So this is my favorite part of that week.
Now, Jesse, you know how we do show Jim Cramer a lot on the show?
Yes.
And you might be getting sick of it because you might be like,
I'm really,
you know what?
I don't want to hear what he has to say because he's usually just being like, Tesla this. I think that Elon doesn't know what he's talking about.
I think you want to hear this.
Okay.
Elon wants proof that you're real, and I don't know how else to prove it.
You're
real.
It meant nothing. It meant nothing. So that's why I said it's elusive that I'm real. But, it's good that he's having fun. And I say that because there is, I think he may be the best we have in terms of when you look at what companies are doing, versus Facebook. What is Facebook accomplishing? What are they doing? Now, I think the world of Tim Cook. But I think that Elon Musk needs to be preserved and stop being involved in legal. Have a little more fun on Twitter, right? I don't mind any of the fun stuff he does. And just keep being inventive, because that's the treasure.
Elon, let us know what else you need, because he's as real as it gets, and I don't know how else to prove that.
Well, it's funny. I have historically been considered a dollar sign represented by a man and being someone who really just cares about return. And I've tried to reassess myself. I was going over with some CEOs this weekend. I want to reassess myself of how much is just growth, how much is return, and how much should be changing the world positively. And I think Elon's put that ladder pretty high.
Can you believe that?
Wow.
It's like someone got to him.
I think it was his brother-in-law.
I think it was one of his kids.
No, it's definitely his brother. It was either his brother-in-law through his wife or through his kids or something. I think it was
somebody
his
got to
brother-in-law.
him.
Easter. They sat down.
Yes.
Easter. He sat him in the car. He floored it.
He gave him an Easter bunny to chew on, like a chocolate Easter bunny, and just
here you go. Shut up.
Listen, Jim. Maybe someone got him a car for Easter or something.
Some Peeps or something,
Maybe.
just to shut him right up.
No, but seriously, I don't know if he was just doing a bit there and he's going to go back to regular Jim, but
he's going to go back to regular Jim.
Okay, but
honestly,
he gave a huge shout out to Elon. He basically said that he is his most important CEO and that he's now going to readjust his vision of the world, growth, earnings, and like how it's going to affect the world. That's
great. I'm glad that
maybe we got to him. Maybe he's a patron. He's a secret patron, and he watches us, and he's finally like, you know what? I'm going to listen to Zach and Jesse.
Maybe his brother-in-law is a patron.
Maybe.
I doubt it. But you never know.
He
goes to EV events. Maybe he hears about us.
Could be that one of you guys as a Patreon reached out to his brother-in-law. I don't know.
Whatever.
This is amazing.
Maybe he had like a health scare and he was like, wow, I'm not going to live on this planet forever. And what is my legacy going to be?
Maybe.
Am I really going to be the guy who doubted Elon Musk?
That's why I think one of his kids got to him. I'm sticking with that.
I don't know. That is crazy.
It's great, though.
It's great. Yeah. And it's like, that should be the kind of the standard response is like, I might not agree with you entirely, but I do recognize that you are actually doing something good for the earth.
If you guys are Patreons, and if some of you are on our Discord, so at the $3 level and more, you can be on our Discord. I love to get stuff like this. This I found through one of you guys on Discord. I wouldn't have found it. So head over to Discord and feed us this cool stuff that's out there. Like maybe one of you can stay on top of Jim Cramer and see if he stays with it or not.
Yeah.
Want to know. All right, so last week, Senator Lisa Murkowski, she's a Republican from Alaska, and Senator Joe Manchin, he's a Democrat from West Virginia, they introduced a bill into the U.S. Senate called the Minerals Security Act, which looks to it wasn't that long a title.
It's boring. What is it going to do?
It looks to streamline regulations and permitting requirements for mines that produce EV supply chain materials. Oh, you heard EV there.
I heard EV. It perked up.
From a national security perspective, when you are vulnerable, as the United States is, and many of our friends and allies are, on a resource that you need, that is a weakness. We don't want that weakness to be exposed.
Oh my goodness! I didn't realize how stressed out I was before that quote. I am. Okay, so they want to...
And the U.S. isn't the only one. France and Germany are also planning an alliance to develop EV batteries with an investment of 5 to 6 billion euro.
Interesting. So this is a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
If not an alarmist-sounding one, scary-sounding national security, vulnerable friends and allies resource.
Interesting point, though.
Yeah.
to get senators to say stuff like that means that they must realize that EVs are the future.
Right.
And this is a Republican and a Democrat. And they're talking about these minerals as if they are
Oil.
Yeah, oil.
I'm sorry. It says what exactly what it sounds
And the thing
like.
is, most of these materials right now are heavily coming from China. I mean, lithium they're one of the biggest suppliers of it. And like in the United States, there's no graphite mines that I know of other than the Nouveau Monde graphite mine in Canada, which is technically North America, but not in the United States.
Right. But this would be part of the, our alliance, our friends and allies.
Right. I think Canada's definitely part of our alliance.
Canada's one of our friends and allies. Right. So, I mean, it's showing that basically it's yet another one of those things that shows that we're not crazy.
No.
And that EVs are a thing that are going to
in
happen.
2016, when we started the show,
Yep.
if I had said that the Senate would be passing a bill about EV supply, you would have been like, you're crazy. They don't even know what EVs are.
Yeah, they don't care.
So the fact that 3 years later, we're actually talking about it as a valuable national resource security,
Right.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And, I mean, to talk about the Nouveau Monde mine in Canada, I mean, we've talked to the owner of the mine.
Yeah.
They're going to be, again, this is a little plug for them, I guess, but it's also kind of a little in for you.
Yeah, it's
one of the only graphite mines in North America.
Yeah, there's only one other one next door, and it's about to run out of graphite.
Right. They're going to be mining it using all EVs.
Yeah.
So
All electric.
all electric mining equipment.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
Carbon neutral mining. I mean, that's what excites me about it, is that basically that part of the battery will be carbon neutral. So 14% of your battery, carbon neutral. Yeah.
Right. And then if it's going to be under this renewable,
I don't think it'll fall
act,
under this
you
because
don't
it won't
think
be in the United States.
Okay.
So
but
that's
still, if we're going to be needing to we need to source all of our EV materials from within
Right.
North America to protect our, I don't know what else do you need to worry about, but that's a good reason you can invest in this mine.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
All right, so this next story is about John McElroy from Autoline. And so he did a recent review of the Model 3's autopilot system, and a lot of people didn't like it. So luckily, a friend of ours at Enjoyable Apps YouTube channel, it's called EV Now, and you should go check out their channel because it's a really cool video. He did this really neat video I want to show you about how John McElroy didn't really get it right. Take it away.
It's very important to accelerate the transition to sustainable transport.
Climate change is real. It is the most urgent threat facing our entire species.
The rules today incent people to create carbon. This is madness.
Some of you may have seen the Autoline piece on the Tesla Model 3. Autoline is an industry YouTube show that reads press releases from car companies and puts them to promo footage of the vehicles they are talking about. But earlier this week, one of the hosts, John McElroy, tested the latest version of Autopilot on a Tesla Model 3. And well, there were a few problems with this review, but what is interesting to me is that it is a perfect example of how old school car guys do not get Tesla at all. It is like handing an iPhone to your grandmother. Not that all grandmothers don't get the iPhone, but hopefully you get the analogy. If we go to the portion of this video where John tests Autopilot, anyone who has a basic understanding of the Autopilot system in its current configuration, version 2019.8.5, knows that he is making some major mistakes here. The first indication that he does not know how to use the system is when he takes it out of Autopilot to change lanes.
Indicating it's in autopilot mode. But I got to get over a lane, so as soon as I turn the steering wheel, it goes off.
He just needed to put on his blinker and it would have changed lanes automatically.
Now I'll tap
He
it
then
back
puts
on.
it back in autopilot, but because he's inexperienced with the system, he pulls the wheel and knocks it out of autopilot. And then he thinks that autopilot is still on, but it's not. You can see this because the autopilot indicator light is off. Clearly, he does not understand the system. The car is still in adaptive cruise control, but he is so out of touch, he thinks the car is actually driving itself.
See how it does. Will it slow down for this turn? Holy crap, it is. It's making the turn.
Because autopilot is off, of course the car is not going to steer itself. But John thinks it is on and he criticizes the system for this.
But it would drive right off unless I turn the wheel.
So here he turns autopilot on in the middle of a turn. This is an example of how really amazing the system is. There's no other consumer car out there that could do this.
The car is handling it all by itself, and it's doing a pretty good job right now.
Of course it is. It works when you don't turn it off by jerking the wheel.
And now let's see how it merges onto the freeway. And it put on the steering wheel automatically.
He means the blinker here.
It turned into the lane, but the guy behind me is flashing his headlights because I'm going too slow.
Yes, he adjusted the speed, but not enough. The car would have done this automatically if he did not adjust the speed with the scroll wheel manually when he first entered the freeway.
Set the speed limit to 75.
Here we see the first warning that he is not putting the correct pressure on the wheel. This alert says apply pressure to the wheel, but he does not see this. To give him the benefit of the doubt here, he's making a video and talking us through this, so his attention is not 100% on the car. For those who do not understand autopilot, if you keep both hands on the wheel balanced, it does not think you're there. It's just like keeping your hands off. There's no electrostatic touch, or there's no squeeze in the wheel. There's no sensors in the wheel that allow it to know you're touching it. You just need to pull it a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. This is what most people unfamiliar with the system do not understand. They compare it to Cadillac Super Cruise. The Cruise system is a good monitoring system because it monitors your eyes, but Cadillac put all this effort into the eye monitoring system because their car will never be fully autonomous. It's always going to be a system that you have to pay attention and watch the road. On the other hand, the Tesla system is built to be a fully autonomous car. It just needs to have continued improvement on the software to where it will eventually be fully autonomous. Elon explains how this is exponentially improving in a podcast he did with Lex Friedman.
Do you think could be benefit gained from driver monitoring?
If you have a system that's at or below human level reliability, then driver monitoring makes sense. But if your system is dramatically better, more reliable than a human, then driver monitoring does not help much.
You're optimistic about the pace of improvement of the system, that from what you've seen with the full self-driving car, computer.
The rate of improvement is exponential. In fact, I think it will become very, very quickly, maybe even towards the end of this year, but I'd be shocked if it's not next year at the latest, that having a human intervene will decrease safety.
So back to John, and he continued driving here, and he has now a second warning on top of the screen. After the first dialogue warning comes up, top of the screen flashes blue, giving you a second warning. And when this is on screen, the system will not change lanes automatically.
And we should catch up to a truck.
Now the blue is off, so he did bounce the wheel a little to the right or left, applying enough pressure to the system to know that someone's there paying attention. And it does change lanes.
That's pretty cool. There's no other car that can do that right now.
Now right here, when he was going into the cloverleaf, the warning comes up again because he does not understand how to apply pressure to the wheel.
Now the big test is coming up. We're coming up to a cloverleaf. Second now, the turn signal
After the
should
first
come on.
dialogue
It should
warning comes up,
move me over
the top of the
to
screen
cloverleaf.
flashes
There
blue,
it goes. There-
giving you a second warning. And when this is on screen, the system will not change lanes automatically.
Turn signal's on.
Now here, he turned the wheel too hard and autopilot disengaged. Someone familiar with the system would not have done this. It is not hard to get the hang of it. And now here, between lanes, he tries to activate autopilot. You need to be in the center of the lane to activate autopilot. Of course, it's not going to work if you're halfway in a lane. It's not a system error, it is a
This is
user
where I'm
error.
disappointed. It could not handle this cloverleaf, or it wanted me to put more pressure on the steering wheel.
Yes, it could not, because you did not understand the type of pressure you needed to apply to the steering wheel. Sorry, John, but it is very easy if you are shown by someone who understands how the system works, and it is clear you do not understand how it works.
So overall, autopilot can be pretty impressive. There's certain situations that it handles really well, such as changing lanes automatically. But there's other things that make this really not all that easy to use. In fact, I'd say if you've got autopilot on, you better really pay attention to what the car is doing, because it ain't as auto as they say it is.
Now, this end statement sounds like he understands autopilot and is commenting as an experienced expert on the system, when he obviously just showed us he knows nothing about the system and does not know the basics of how to operate it. Unfortunately, this is all too common when old school car people review the Tesla. Now you know a popular YouTube show points out another shortcoming on one of John's other shows, Autoline After Hours. One reporter who covers the auto industry completely does not get it at all.
Sandy also brought up that a lot of the big automakers bring in consultants to answer questions, and he said that he's met these consultants and he thinks they don't understand the auto industry. So that's interesting.
Right.
Then David Welch from Bloomberg, I really think he doesn't get it. He kept talking about things like how Big Auto's dealer network is going to help them. And I'm like, dude, that's what's killing them.
Right.
This is just a few examples of how the auto industry does not get Tesla, and I think they are spreading a lot of misinformation. I made this video to hopefully help squash some of these concerns, illuminate people on the truth, what Tesla is really doing, and hopefully help push us to a cleaner, brighter future. Thanks for watching.
In the future, any car that does not have autonomy would be about as useful as a horse.
Super in depth, super right on the money.
Yeah.
Shows each one of the mistakes that he makes. And this is stuff that I do see the few times that I've given test drives to people where they actually drive the car. These are the mistakes I make.
So John McElroy responded back to this video. I've driven every lane-keeping cruise control system there is, which all require the driver to keep his hands on the wheel. I know how they work. I also drove that Tesla for a week using autopilot and knew how to keep my hands on the wheel. In fact, I had driven that exact same route the day before we videotaped that segment. The problem was not me. It was autopilot. Sometimes it works okay, other times not, especially in heavy traffic. Other Tesla owners have told me the same. I have no doubt that Tesla will improve the system, but right now it's not as good as advertised. John McElroy.
This goes back to exactly what Mark was saying in the video. These guys think that they know what they're talking about, and it is a lot like handing your grandmother an iPhone. My grandmother has an iPhone. She does pretty okay with it, although she did need help hooking up the Bluetooth to her car. But
There you go.
everyone needs a little help with their phones every now and then.
And I have no problem.
Right.
This is my point.
Everyone needs a little help now and then.
Right.
They all need to be told how the thing works that's brand new and didn't exist in your wildest imagination before you were born.
You know, you just got 12.1.2, and we were out there learning it ourselves. We're both out there talking about it, reading about it, because we admit that when there's a new update, we don't fully understand it yet. We have to practice
You
with
might think that we're just somehow some kind of like connected into the matrix kind of thing, or that we're just such experts that
We're
as
not.
soon as the update comes out that we like know everything. And we don't. We know just as much as you. We're like, holy crap, what the heck does that mean?
Right.
And we sit there and we read it for half an hour, and we
Right.
talk about it for half an hour, and then we try it for half an hour. And then if we don't get it, then we go browse the forums to see if someone else is figuring
And
it
here's
out.
the thing. I think with John McElroy, I think that either he was told incorrectly how to do it, like maybe his friend who we borrowed the car from.
Or he's assuming that it works the same way as the Cadillac,
That was a really good point in the video.
the Cruise. Because, yeah, that uses like touch sensors and eye
Right.
detectors and stuff like
I
that.
don't think he understands about the tugging
pressure
on the wheel. Right.
It's all about that
Right.
the amount of torque that you put on the wheel, and,
And-
he continuously put too much torque on the
Right.
wheel. And I've seen people drive like
Yes.
this. It frustrates the hell out of me when they're just pulling it out of autopilot and being like, "What is going on?" It's like, just use it properly.
Right.
Pay attention.
Right.
Like, and I know that he was filming a thing. I can relate. It's hard
Sure.
when you're filming things.
But here's the thing. If he had written an article about it or had related this on his show and not shown the actual footage, we would have
wouldn't-
just had
yeah.
his word for it. And we would have gone, oh, well, he knows a lot.
And there's a lot of people that do respect him because, I mean, for other cars, I'm sure he. Well, I don't know. I have to doubt seriously everything that he does after watching.
And here's
that.
the thing: if Mark hadn't made that video where he stopped the video,
Right.
showed us zoom
With
ins on
arrows
things,
and
when
everything.
you're watching it live, you may not have even picked up on it. So
Right.
you might have thought, "Oh, wow, it didn't handle that cloverleaf very well."
Right.
But when you go back and see that he didn't drive it properly,
Right.
and he blamed it on the car, it'd be one thing if he said, I'm new to this."
Right.
But he instead he said, "Well, it's good sometimes, but other times it sucks."
Right.
And
And it's like, yeah, when autopilot's engaged. And I've been testing it myself. And I try and hold myself as accountable as possible. I mean, I'm not showing video of myself using it, but I am very vigilant as to whether autopilot is engaged. And sometimes it takes it a little aggressively. Like it'll take the off ramp a little aggressively, and I'll be like, whoa. And I'll have my hands ready to take over. But a lot of the times I don't have to.
But here's the key point that I like to keep going back to.
Hmm.
The car is learning. It's like having your 16-year-old take that off ramp. If you didn't like how your 16-year-old did it the first time, you wouldn't be like, "You're never driving again."
Yeah.
You would be like, "Okay, good."
I think some people
I'm
do
still
that.
alive.
I think some parents do that with their kids.
Probably.
Because then I see them on the road like 10 years later and they can't drive.
Right. So what you got to do is you say, "Okay, what
Right.
did you do right and wrong?"
Right.
If you take over from autopilot on that, that's great because it's teaching. It's like taking over for your kid or whatever. It's teaching them that you did something wrong.
And let's explain how that works. There's thousands of people constantly using autopilot on the roads at any one time. When you pull it out of autopilot, that gets saved everything leading up to that and everything a little bit after that gets saved. It goes to Tesla. Tesla can then review why you may have done that. They
Right,
were
now
like,
some of it-
there was a giraffe in the way.
Right. Now, some of it's done by humans.
Yep.
But now more and more of it's being done by computers.
Right, so it's actually able to label everything that's
Right.
going on and be like, oh, well, we didn't see that crocodile in the middle of the
Right.
road.
Or like, oh, they were too close to the, like 1,400 Tesla drivers, when we get to this off-ramp, take it out because we're too close to the left or something.
And
So
then that
that's how it
goes
learns.
back into the neural network, which is very confusing. But basically, it tweaks the neural network. It
Right.
teaches it to take it a little bit better.
Right, and that's why autopilot has been getting better. All right, so Top Gear, calling you out.
Right. This is very similar to the story that we just talked about.
Yep. So here's a kind of mediocre, I would say, article about 3 cars: the I-Pace, the e-tron, and the Model X.
Misinformed.
Misinformed. It gives you some interesting things that are kind of true, and then here's a paragraph it throws in there. Now, economy and running costs, the crux of the matter. Audi reckons the e-tron will do 241 miles at 2.57 miles per kilowatt hour. The I-Pace claims 263 miles and 2.92 miles per kilowatt hour, while Tesla Model X hasn't yet switched to the new WLTP regs, so reckons you're good for 351 miles between stops. It won't. It'll do 200 miles. That's what they'll all do, in fact. Excuse me?
So, first of all,
What?
First of all, yes, they are reporting the WLTP standards for both the Audi and the Jaguar. Model X uses the EPA range, which is more accurate,
But they claim that they're using the NEDC range.
which is not
True. And also, there's no Model X, I don't think, out there with the 100 kilowatt hour battery pack that would get you only 200 miles.
Right. The Model X is way more efficient than these other cars with similar battery packs, because they did like a really good job with efficiency. And I think that they didn't want to mention it.
No, I agree.
And there's lots of places in this article that they seem to praise electric cars, and then they seem to no. Like there was one part where they're talking about like, oh, there is no range anxiety because it matches up with bladder anxiety. Okay, cool. But there is infrastructure anxiety.
And, and time anxiety.
Time anxiety.
Right.
And it's like, that's range anxiety, dude.
Right.
Now I can see the difference between the two, and they do talk about supercharging, luckily. But a lot of it is...
It's FUD. It's basically
lot of
what I
FUD.
take it as is they wrote this article, and then some editor at Top Gear or somebody in charge
Somewhere.
of something, some advertiser said, you got to water this down a little. You're making the Model X look too good.
Right. Because in direct comparison, we've seen that the Model X gets way better range.
Yes.
Now, and I understand if you're like, oh, but the Audi is so much quieter on the interior or whatever. Or, I like the German interior that they have on the Audi. Sure, fine. I will give you that. But to say that they haven't switched to the WLTP standard, which is a
lame standard.
It's an incorrect standard.
Yeah, I mean, you're misinforming your readers if you're telling them that those are the two ranges for
And
the
that the
I-Pace
Model
and
X, and that the Model X only gets 200 miles, and that they will all get 200 miles.
Because imagine many people who haven't driven an electric car yet are going to read this Top Gear article to decide which of these 3 luxury cars they're going to get, and they're going to be sadly mistaken if they don't buy the correct one for
They're
them.
not going to get any of them. This article is basically just to be like, there's these cars, they can do really amazing things, but you don't want one.
Yeah. Chamath Palihapitiya, he's the billionaire CEO of Social Capital. He just went on CNBC, and he said a few things that made us smile.
Let's talk about Tesla. Okay, what was it? More than 2 years ago, you're at Sohn. You pitched the converts.
Converts, yeah.
Where are you with those today? And then I want to talk to you more broadly about that company.
So if you take a step back, right? If I asked you to sort of, attempt to drive a golf ball off the pier here into a teacup and gave you 1 million tries, I suspect that in 1 million times you would not be able to do it. But if you then took somebody else and they were able to do it 9 times out of 10, you'd say, wow, that person is a great golfer. The analogy that I would make is Elon basically did that equivalent. He was able to send a rocket into space, do all kinds of interesting, enormously productive, useful things for the world while in space, and then come back down and land on a boat in the middle of the ocean. The kind of technical sophistication that he has in his mind, that he's been able to apply across his companies, is second to none, quite honestly. So when we looked at Tesla, what we thought was a company at an inflection point that was as close to a its version of an iPhone moment. And what I mean by that is a company that had been growing up, taking risks, and had finally found the mass market product that would unlock an enormous amount of product market fit. And that was the Model 3. And so far, what I would say is he's living up to what he has signed up for, which is to commercialize electrification, to commercialize an incredible user experience at a price point that has frankly cannibalized its competitors. And what you see in the results, in my opinion, is a company that is now maturing under all of that demand. And so, again, is it the best suited company if you want to drive and observe quarter over quarter precision and performance? No. But if you want to take a step back and take a 3-5 year view and say, where can I compound my money? And particularly with the converts, what's so beautiful is it's downside protected because it sits on top of all the equity and the other debt. And so if you have any concern that there's liquidity issues, or if you have any concerns that the company may have to sell, they get paid first. So to me, it was a riskless option on the Edison of our generation.
But you weren't necessarily comfortable enough with the story to buy the common stock?
The reason is because the common stock is not controlled, unfortunately, enough by him or the insiders. What it's controlled by are a bunch of vulture-like venture and hedge funds, mostly hedge funds, who like to prey on that company. If you look at, for example, the Twitter traffic, or if you look at the forum traffic around Tesla, the amount of hyping or under-hyping, the amount of sniping is enormous. All of that signals to me that it is a market that is out of the control of the founders and the executives and firmly in the hands of financial manipulators.
Well, come on,
so
I mean,
my perspective is buy the bonds, you're protected, and allow Elon to execute.
Isn't the founder and his actions responsible for a lot of what you're talking about?
Well, all I see, frankly, is that he has tried to execute to the best of his abilities. He puts out aggressive numbers. He tries to meet those numbers. Sometimes he misses those numbers. What would you rather
often he misses the numbers.
But that's okay, because in the course of the year or in the course of the 5 years, if you take a 5-year step back and say, what has he promised in 2014 to what is he doing in 2019, you'd be ecstatic. Similarly, if you take a step back and say from 2019 to 2024, let the man do his job, will we be better or worse off as a planet, as a species, as humanity, as consumers? We will be better off.
And no one debates his genius. It's lauded, celebrated. It's the fact that the way he runs his company. You're comfortable with that? If you're an investor in Tesla, you're 100% comfortable with the way he is a CEO?
Yeah.
None of the actions that he's done over the last year or so give you pause at all?
What do you mean? Meaning the Model 3 is an incredible car. I just bought one. It's incredible. I bought it the way that it was.
Funding secured? I mean, what was that?
Okay, maybe he stepped out of bounds. My point is, you're getting caught up in the window dressing. I'm focusing on the main course. The main course is on the table. The choice for you as a buyer or a seller of that stock is, do you want to eat it? If you get caught up in all of the stuff around the edges, maybe he may mistweet from time to time. My point is, who cares? Your job as a smart investor is to separate the facts and the news from the fiction and the noise. And all of that stuff doesn't matter. It does not change the fact that tens of thousands of consumers are buying that car faster than they can get their hands on it. It doesn't change that the minute you sit inside that car, your definition of what is expected is altered forever. And you wonder why every other car around you that you ever step in, that you may buy, doesn't have the same things that that car offers. So at the end of the day, whether you like his style or not, his substance is irrefutable.
Sure, but I walked down the street here in San Francisco the other day. I see a billboard for the new Audi electric car that's coming. I mean, competition is coming. If it's not already here, that gives you no pause?
You're right, because I remember all the Zune media players I bought after Apple released the iPod. I also remember the enormous number of amazing smartphones I bought when the iPhone was launched. It's not what people do. You know, it tends to be the case that when you redefine expectations and you have a category leader and you have an indelible brand and a mark that people recognize, the easiest decision, let me be a little pejorative, the lazy decision is to pick the winner and go with it. And in this case, there is a clear winner in electrification. It is done. That die has been cast. And so now the question is, can he build the infrastructure to deliver the demand? And if given time and if given patience, I believe he will, and I vote with my money that he can do that. And everybody that bets against him can do that as well, but at what stake, really? Because it's not as if there's no downside protection for the stock. The people who short this company are so short-sighted because the number of companies that would come out of the woodwork, you don't think that Apple, with $200 billion of cash, backstops this company and has a chance to enter a $1 trillion market overnight by buying that business if it gets imperiled in any way? Google, which already tried to buy it, wouldn't try to buy it again?
I'd say it's a risk.
So what are we betting against? We're betting against a cleaner Earth because we don't like that. We like to suck in the carbon monoxide and the fumes from all these cars. We're betting against beautiful flat screens, beautiful ways in which to manage your experience inside the car because we don't like that.
No, we're betting
Why?
against whether he can deliver what he says, the fundamentals of the company. That's what they're betting against.
No, that's not true. People are betting against his style. They don't like his style.
It's not just that.
It is
come on,
just
there's smart people like Jim Chanos. He's a smart investor. He's not betting just on his style.
Jim Chanos makes money once a decade. And while the market rips up, the guy just bleeds money and he's never on CNBC. And every time something works, he's there for 5 minutes. Great for Jim Chanos. Fantastic as a hedge in a portfolio where you have 1% in a short fund. But the reality is being long equities makes sense. Being long innovation makes sense. Betting against entrepreneurs that are changing the world has never been a profitable endeavor. Why start now?
I'm sure Mr. Chanos is going to take issue with your numbers and some of your comments. And
I'm happy to post my returns against Chanos anytime he wants.
Right.
I know it was 8 minutes long.
Yeah.
But if you stuck through it, I think you saw that he
was
just
very worth
compared
it.
the Audi e-tron to
a Zune MP3 player, which is honestly it's a pretty good comparison.
I don't know if you're old enough to remember, if you're young, but the Zune MP3 player. Do you remember?
No.
Okay, so just for you 20-somethings out there, Apple came up with their iPod,
right,
which is a fantastic MP3 player, and then Microsoft was like, we got to come up with something. They came up with the Zune, and they poured a ton of advertising into it, and it was the crappiest MP3 player practically ever made, and no one bought it. And so his argument is, sure, competition, but they have the best in class, so why would you buy anything piece of crap?
Right. And I mean, I didn't have either a Zune nor an iPod.
Right.
I had a
Spotify
SanDisk. No, at the time I had it was powered by like a little AAA battery.
I wasn't going to spend that much money on you.
It was this big. And that was fine or whatever. But I didn't have the whole iPod experience. I was like driving the Nissan Leaf version of the MP3 player.
No, but this guy has so many good points, and I love that he just stays on target when the CNBC guy obviously is getting an earpiece thing. It's like, rip into CEO of Tesla.
Stop him talking about how cool his car is.
Right.
Do you notice that he's like, I just bought a Model 3 and it's amazing. And he's like, what about that? Wait, hold on, talk about something else.
And then the rip against Jim Chanos. So you remember Jim Chanos is a big Tesla short, and
he's a short seller in general.
And Chamath just came out and said, basically, Jim Chanos makes money once a decade, right? When there's a huge problem in the market and he shorted something, he comes on here and he's glowing how he made money. The rest of the time, he gets his butt kicked. Mm-hmm. And he's basically saying the way to make money is to invest in innovative, smart technology, not by shorting it. Right. That's never been a profitable endeavor. And yet that's what you're doing. And then he got kind of scolded by the interviewer. Here he is, a billionaire.
This was the weirdest thing. Yeah. You have a billionaire sitting in front of you and he's, well, I don't think that Jim is going to really appreciate the comments that you said. He wasn't going to be like, oh, did I offend him? I'm so sorry.
Chamath didn't bring up Jim himself. He got handed that question.
Oh, Jim Chanos, he's a very smart guy.
Right.
Which is a great way to introduce him. Oh, he's a really smart guy. It's sort of like, I don't know. It's sort of how you'd like introduce your grandson. You'd be like, he's so smart and handsome. Like, it's how I get introduced from my grandmother. But and then he gets scolded like, I don't know, like a passive aggressive gym teacher would scold you like, oh, the principal isn't going to like how you talked about.
He pretty
his
much wrapped up the interview right there and
Right.
went to commercial. Like, I think he would have kept going if it hadn't been
This
for that.
got pulled off of CNBC's
Yes.
YouTube channel.
Yes, the only reason we can find this for you is because enough people grabbed it. And that's very telling. They do not want
Very
this
telling.
message to come out. They were hoping probably that this guy would give him a nice quote about, Elon doing something wrong.
Right. Or that he wasn't going to be as eloquent
No.
as he was.
He
Chamath,
said,
Chamath, if you're watching this, and if anyone knows Chamath, send him our way.
he's a billionaire, Jesse.
Chamath, I don't care. We can still hang out, man.
Okay.
Just come
Yeah, I
on the
would love
show.
to.
We'll do like an interview or something.
I would
we'll
love to interview him.
Because and we won't be such dicks about the interview. We're not going to
Yeah,
be
you can
like,
have as much-
what about blah, blah, blah.
You can have as much time as you want.
As much time as
you
you
pointed
want,
out,
yeah.
the people who short this company, Tesla, are so short-sighted. People are betting against Elon's style, but they should not be betting against what he's doing.
Right. Because I love how he brought up the driving a golf ball into a teacup analogy.
Yeah.
It's exactly that. It's like, here's a guy who knows what the hell he's doing.
Yeah.
He's done a bunch of amazing things if
Yeah.
you do any research. And that's part of the reason why we actually were like, oh, Elon Musk is a really cool guy. Let's, check out, let's buy a Model X. Or
Right.
you said that. I didn't have to buy the Model X. But, that's one of the reasons why you did it.
Right.
Was that like, okay, here's a person who started PayPal. Here's a person who can land rockets.
Right.
And made an amazing electric car.
I know.
Yeah.
It's just great to see, and we're going to see this again right here from Kathy Wood on CNBC, that, we're telling you this stuff, but you don't have to trust us. You can listen to other millionaires and billionaires who, if they were wrong all the time, wouldn't be millionaires or billionaires.
Right.
So take a listen to this. This is Kathy Wood on CNBC this week.
Wall Street is getting serious about industry disruption, and there are a handful of ETFs focused on just that. ARK Invest products are built to capitalize on disruptive forces like artificial intelligence, perhaps robotics, genomics, next generation internet, you name it. And the woman behind them is here with us today. Kathy Wood is the founder, CEO, and chief investment officer at ARK Invest. She joins us here now at Post 9. Kathy, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here, Don.
So Tim had earlier mentioned this idea of actively managed ETFs, the ones that don't necessarily track just the S&P or some broader index. Is it fair to characterize ARK Invest as one of those actively managed types ETFs?
Yes. We trade practically every day, so we're very active.
So what does that mean when you trade every day? Because there's this idea that passivity or index tracking is what ETFs are all about. They become synonymous, but that's not necessarily the case.
Right. In 2013, I thought the same. I didn't think ETFs had anything to do with what I do. And we started looking into the wrapper and found there was no reason, as long as we were willing to disclose our holdings at the end of every day, there's no reason we couldn't do an active ETF, active equity ETF.
And take us through the strategies. We mentioned that you tilt towards the disruptive type technologies. What exactly does that mean? How exactly do you hone in on the stocks that go into these actively managed exchange-traded funds?
Sure. Well, our screen is not a benchmark. Our screen is our research. Our starting point is from the top down, and we're looking for learning curves or cost curve declines that are associated with technology, and they're fairly consistent over time, depending on the technology. And from a timing point of view, we want to make sure that we're ready for prime time. So we ask the question, once we've figured out the cost decline, okay, for every percentage point decline in price, how much does demand increase? Are we ready for prime time? So in the late 90s, if we had asked that question about most of these technologies, the answer would have been no. And yet investors were chasing them and valuing them on eyeballs and other such things. Today, they are happening. We're ready for prime time. And the fear I see out there when it comes to volatility or disruption or anything that's not in an index is palpable. That's the real opportunity. The dream was too early. Anyone who chased it got burned. Today, they're afraid. They should be moving into it.
So Tim, you opened the door to this discussion when you brought up actively managed ETFs. Yep. So as we talk about it, I mean, you're an active trader. You are a trader on fast money. So how exactly do some investors or even asset managers look towards creating products and then actively trading the portfolio to create value that is then passed on to the holders of those particular instruments?
Look, if as an investor you can invest alongside of a manager, invest in a manager who is actively monitoring a portfolio and going through the same stress testing that a long-short equity manager, for example, which is what I did for 13 years, is doing, you're getting the best bargain in the business. That's when you really have to ultimately understand who you're investing in. So to the extent that managers like ARK Invest can be taking this area of the economy where there's enormous innovation and where there's an opportunity, I think that's fantastic. The question really is, do investors totally understand the investment approach of the manager? And I think it's great to have Kathy here because I think there's some controversial stuff that she's been involved in.
Well,
that I think we
let's
can
talk
understand
about that because the reason. So Kathy, for better or worse, because there's always two sides to a story. You at ARK Invest have become very closely associated with one stock in particular, and that is Tesla, because you made a lot of waves by attaching a $4,000 price target to the shares at one point.
Yes.
This means that you are obviously very bullish on Tesla and you do hold it in the funds. Is that correct? And if so, is it just a buy and hold, hope it pans out for the next 20 or 25 years? Or is it something different in the way that you approach this particular holding in Tesla?
It is our largest position, but before I go into that, our conviction has increased in the last year or so. It's our largest position. It's down about 29% this year, and it's always been our largest position this year. And yet our fund is up 28%.
How is that? How does that happen?
Yes.
How does that happen?
It is because last year, when genomics was under assault because of reimbursement concerns and pricing concerns and so forth, we were leaning into those heavily. So you buy low, right? We were leaning into those. And so our second largest position, Invitae, which we think is one of the most important molecular diagnostic companies out there, riding down the cost curve of DNA sequencing, it's up 125%. It got as low as $5 last year. Today it's $18. So leaning into that has really paid off. And it's true with the entire genome sector. We're doing the same this year with Tesla, but our conviction level there is so high that it never left our top position.
How could it be so high? I mean, Tim, this is a stock that is, if you look at a chart of Tesla over the course of the year to date and the 1 year period, this has at best been a roller coaster ride. So, at worst been one that's trending lower.
But first of all, it's great to have you here and congrats on the performance in the portfolio because I think there's no question there's an active component to what you're doing. And I think I would like to invest alongside of that if I was an investor. With Tesla, I guess there's two questions. I think there's been some obvious issues in terms of performance and some obvious issues on the balance sheet, but that's my interpretation. It may not be yours. The first question I have is really just corporate governance risk, because I look at a company leaving aside an SEC investigation that one might argue is overdone. I think it's a company where disclosure and consistency and the same standards I would hold to any company, somehow for this company, no one seems to hold them to it. And how do you approach corporate governance?
So we have a 6-point scoring system. All of them incorporate ESG in some way, shape, or form. First one is people management culture. Nothing bothered us about what Elon was tweeting or anything until funding secured, which once we found out that was not true, we said, okay, that's not good. And so we did ding Tesla for management when that happened.
Does that mean a higher discount rate? I mean,
yes.
Mechanically, what does that mean?
Yes, but you know what our target is.
Right.
It's
not going to really move.
No.
Yeah.
But within a month and then 3 months, 2 of our other scores started soaring. One was we learned about their artificial intelligence chip. We saw the specs. Right. And our analyst, James Wang, came from NVIDIA. That's what they're replacing. And he said, oh my goodness, and he's going to write something this Wednesday about it. This leapfrogs the competition. Yeah. And they're at least 3, if not 4 years ahead of the competition. And then a few months later, execution went up when not only did they not lose in the third quarter $700 million, but they made, this is cash flow, $1.4 billion. So that was a miss in terms of consensus expectations of roughly $2 billion. That's what happens with exponential growth.
So Kathy, though, I mean, let's put this in perspective also. The stock is down for a reason, partly because there's a fear of a possible capital raise that has to happen down the line.
Yeah.
They may have to issue more stock, raise more money, and that's going to dilute existing shareholders. Are you concerned about that aspect of Tesla, that they are burning through cash and that they need to raise more, and that could put pressure on the stock?
Well, I believe that's in the stock.
Or would you welcome that?
Exactly.
Is really a question I have, because what I wonder is why this is a company who has enormous cash burn and an enormous opportunity. This is the $1 trillion idea with $1 trillion worth of issues around it.
Yeah.
And I would be out there raising money tomorrow. Can the company not raise money?
Sure. Oh, it can raise money. I don't think Elon wants to do it at this valuation. I think he thought, and the company thought, that their autonomy day last week was going to give them a nice opportunity, that once analysts understood how far ahead of the competition they are, whether it's Waymo or Cruise, in terms of autonomy, and how soon it is going to evolve, and that they would be able to raise. What happened last week came clear to me is the analysts following this stock don't know how to analyze it, because it's not a technology stock. It is that. It's not a car company. Yes, it is. Battery. It's utility. It's something for everyone, and no one can pull it all together. We have set out our research teams. We have broken them out not by sector, but by innovation platform. So we have a robotics, autonomous vehicles or robots. Energy storage, they will be electric. Artificial intelligence, they will be powered by artificial intelligence. Transportation as a service, we have 4 analysts collaborating on this. I don't think research departments out there are set up to analyze this stock. There is an amazing inefficiency in this stock. It is our highest conviction idea for a reason.
So let's do this. Tim, you as a manager and a former long-short portfolio manager have traded around positions, trimmed, added to, that sort of thing. Is it fair to say, Kathy, at ARK Invest, that just because Tesla is your top holding, that you just hold it there, or are you constantly managing around that position in and out?
So disruptive innovation is characterized by controversy and volatility. And so we know we're going to get opportunities to buy stocks. We lie in wait for those opportunities. Many people think of, because of what we do, disruptive innovation, that we're momentum driven. Absolutely not. We lie in wait. So if you just take Tesla alone, 2018, you're right, the roller coaster. If you take away the performance of the stock, which was up last year, just take that away and just look at what happened, what we delivered in alpha because of our trading around controversy. We delivered 175 basis points just from Tesla. And we get opportunities like that throughout the portfolio.
And I think that's impressive. And I think that's kind of a manager that I would want to be tactically, along with a fundamental view, invested with. I would push back on that volatility. First of all, congrats for laying in the weeds and buying stuff cheap, and that it's been proven out this year in your portfolio. But I look at a stock like Tesla, and over a 5-year period, the stock's done nothing, with being one of the most volatile stocks in the world, at least of the mega cap stocks. So I look at, and I could cherry pick numbers, but I could say, really off the high of 2014, you're down 20% by holding Tesla for 5 years when supposedly it had a huge competitive advantage. Yeah. There was no competitors in their space. Right. It was being priced as a technology company. And the stock really at a point where now it looks like there's some balance sheet issues. The competition's never been heavier, although I think you'll push back on that. I think I appreciate your argument, which is that they're not an auto company. They're not a tech company.
But even more, just let's take the electric vehicle. The Model S, 2012 it was launched. Yep. Not one of those competitors is anywhere near it. We're 7 years later. Now let me take your other point. This trading around, this trading range, you as a trader and investor, but as a trader also, understand that when you build a base like that, one of two things is going to happen. It's either going to break down, and that's what a lot of the bears have been betting on, and they've been throwing everything at it, or it's going to break out. Clearly, we believe is going to break out. And the longer the base, you say 5 years, the longer the base, the bigger the breakout. So we're really looking forward to that.
So again, she gets hit constantly with these things about, little
What about this? What
FUD
about that?
attacks. And she brings it back to the basics every single time.
Right.
She basically says that the churn that we're seeing. So when she talks about churn, I just want to be clear.
Right.
Churn means when a stock is just going up and down within this range, right? And that's what we've seen with Tesla stock. It's not really busted out. It hasn't really busted down low. It's just been trading along in this very kind of repeatable pattern for about 5 years. When you see that in a stock, it does mean exactly what Kathy said. It either means something's just gonna bust out to the downside and just die, or it's going to bust out to the upside and take off. And the longer that churn happens kind of determines how fast either one of those two things happen on the other side.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. Also, the fact that she tracks this company differently than any of the other analysts. So she doesn't just have a car analyst go check out Tesla.
Right.
She
Like,
puts,
well, the cars, they're here,
They've
John,
got
and they seem to have wheels. I don't know how they work. Don't know how the autopilot system works. Sometimes it works great. Other times doesn't seem to work at all. Back over to you, Jim.
One of her analysts worked at NVIDIA, so he knows chips inside and out. And he just came out with that report that we had on the show this week, which shows that Tesla is ahead by 4 years. If you're ahead of NVIDIA, we're not talking
anyone by 4 years.
We're talking NVIDIA is the creme de la creme. Like,
Right.
look at the stock price for NVIDIA. They're the creme de la creme of what they do. And if Tesla can now do that better and I'm not saying for games, I'm saying for cars, but is ahead of them by 4 years, even if they're ahead by 2 years, that's incredible. Right. So they're ahead by 4 years. That's why she knows what she's talking about. And the other really important part of this interview, I think you have to keep in mind, she talks about the 1990s. And in the 1990s,
really cool point.
All of these technologies were coming out and everyone was just jumping on board. Oh my God, there's going to be so much, 3D printing and this and that. And it's not to say that that wasn't going to take off. It is, but you have to get the timing right. And so if you jumped into 3D printing too early, you sat there for decades, well, nothing really happened. That's what she's saying. At the time, they were using statistics that didn't mean anything, like eyeballs. So they'd be like, yes, well, 30 million people are thinking about a 3D printer.
Right.
But the price wasn't right and the technology wasn't right. What she's saying is we look at how the percentage change against actual technology with price is going to take off. And now we feel comfortable jumping into these certain technologies.
Right. It's sort of like how you wouldn't buy a room-sized computer that would cost, $100,000 back in the 1950s.
Right.
But today you can buy something with like a million times the computing power that fits in your pocket.
Right.
And it costs, a couple $100, maybe $1,000.
And I want to talk about like mobile computing. A lot of people were talking about mobile computing before it became what we actually have in our pocket today. And they were talking about it in the 1990s when it wasn't really ready for prime time yet. We didn't all have the correct smartphone in our pocket. So if you jumped in too early, now you're burned and you're like, I'm never investing in smart mobile again. Right. And now's the time to invest in that. So same thing with electric cars. You might have been like, 1990s, electric cars, I'm going to invest.
Right.
And then there wasn't one. And so you're like, I'm never doing that again. I got burned.
Right. Or you're like, the GM1, awesome. Oh, what, they crushed all of them?
Right.
Huh. Well, I guess it's because they didn't work or something.
So anyway, she's super smart. Her returns prove it. It's just, again, nice to see really smart people making the really smart arguments for Tesla.
Right.
None of this just fuddy like, well, but she tweets a lot.
Right. Yeah, and you notice that not a lot of people respond to the well thought out answers that you get, and that's right when you know that you're just dealing with a bully.
Yes,
someone who just will not reflect. They will not be like, oh, I didn't consider that, or well, I have a backup point to what you just said, which
really
is aha, but here is a true argument.
That's a really good point about bullies. I just want to say that when you have a bully on climate change or on electric cars or whatever, on Tesla, immediately, because just like you said, they're not going to give you a well-informed, reasoned argument that you can then talk about with them. Because we're all willing to have a back and forth discussion as long as we stay within the rules, right, of discussions. But as soon as someone says to you like, yeah, but nobody likes him, well, it's like, well, that's not facts anymore. Like, that's just you're making up stuff.
Right. And if you're not getting a proper response, you can quickly realize that this person just wants you to shut up. They just want to keep throwing crap at you until you're just like, you know what, whatever. I'm not going to deal with you anymore. Goodbye.
Right.
And then they can be like, well, I won. I've seen this a lot, and it's just like you need to understand when that's happening to just be like, is this worth my time?
Right.
Luckily on air, you know, these people look like idiots when they're in front of, you know, thousands of people just throwing a bunch of FUD at someone who has done their research and is able to bat every single one of the things out of the way and just be like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense because of this. And then you're like, you know, and then they're just sort of, well, but what about this? And it's just like,
Yeah.
you have nothing.
I think we should end with something a little fun.
Yes.
This is Jaden Smith, so Will Smith's son.
Will Smith's son
He's a
who
rock
gets-
star, I guess. Kind
If
of.
you-
a pop star.
If you have enough family fame, I guess, you can just be a rock star.
But I'm a Jaden Smith fan in the sense that he was early adopter of the Model X, and he was always out there on social media showing it off. And here he is showing it off at his concert. I want to make a couple suggestions. Don't stand underneath a Model X when it's levitating above you, no matter how many wires are holding it, because it weighs 6,000 pounds.
Right. Maybe they took the battery pack out.
Okay, maybe, yeah. Although
I don't think they did.
I don't think they did because I think it. He hops on it later and like goes for a ride, and then I think the doors open and close. So I don't know, but yeah, cool. I mean, it's great publicity for Tesla.
Yeah, it gets on TMZ, which
Right.
is good because I don't read TMZ.
My other
and I don't
suggestion would
watch
be
TMZ.
if you're going to show it at night so that you can't see the wires and you just see the cool lit up car.
Zach, you're not a pyrotechnics.
Yeah, but we're gonna have a
show
model. We're gonna have a
specialist.
semi truck, and we're gonna do stuff like this. I don't know if we're gonna fly a Model X over the crowd, but
good.
But still,
But we might have a roadster that can fly anyway.
there
so
you
you
go.
never know.
That would be cool. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us,
Yeah,
everybody.
that was great.
That was a lot of fun.
That was super fun.
I think we'll go do the intro to Model 3 tip of the week. Although I think we're gonna get away from that. I've been thinking about that, like they should kind of stand on their own. But as patrons, you get to see it before everyone else. So we're going to stick it in here. It's on obstacle aware acceleration, which is a feature. Well, check it out because I think you'd be very interested if you drive a Tesla. There's a button in your Tesla that may keep you from making a big mistake. Next on Now You Know. Okay, I hit you with that clickbaity intro because I get it. Obstacle-aware acceleration doesn't seem like that fun of an update. Like parts. But it's actually a super important update that hasn't gotten much attention, probably because once you turn it on, you may not ever think about it again. Your Tesla has forward-facing radar and ultrasonic sensors. Now in the autopilot menu, you have this option. All right, so we're gonna hit our menu right here. We're gonna go to autopilot. Now you might say, it's not there, Zach. Well, actually, it is. It's down here. It's called obstacle aware acceleration, and we're gonna leave that on, and I recommend you do too. What this does is if your Tesla senses that something like a car or building is in front of you, it will limit your acceleration so that if you accidentally tap on the accelerator too hard, or maybe you confuse the brake pedal with the accelerator, your Tesla won't lurch forward so fast that you can't correct. Because let's face it, the thing we all love about electric cars, the instant torque, could get you into a lot of trouble if you hit the accelerator too hard or if you switch and use the wrong pedal. So let's see what the car does with that setting on and with it off. All right, so first I'm gonna go back to autopilot, back to obstacle aware acceleration. I'm gonna shut that off. And now I'm gonna go over to driving and make sure that we're in standard acceleration. So now the car should accelerate without obstacle aware acceleration on. And we're gonna need something like this cardboard box to put in front of the car to act as our obstacle in case the test doesn't work out the way I hoped. So now the car is ready to accelerate the way it normally does without obstacle aware acceleration on. So we're gonna be going fast here, folks. Here we go. If that had been a car or a building, I would have maybe done a little scratchy scratch. Okay, so now we'll test it with obstacle aware acceleration on. Yep, you can see that the car sees the box with its radar and ultrasonics. All right, here we go.
Obstacle-aware acceleration definitely worked. It felt like a completely different acceleration curve. It gave me the time to get my foot off the accelerator pedal and onto the brake.
Now you might be saying, I don't need this. I'm a good driver. But according to NHTSA, motorists in the US step on their brake pedals nearly 1 million times per year. And every day in the US, there are 44 pedal-related accidents. That's 16,000 accidents a year caused by drivers stepping on the wrong pedal.
Teslas keep improving. And when an improvement is made, like obstacle-aware acceleration, it's updated to all the cars across the entire fleet.
I recommend you turn on obstacle-aware acceleration. It could save you from an accident. You're already driving the safest car on the road. Obstacle-aware acceleration makes it even safer.